I first met her on the day everyone else decided I was already dead. The sky above Outpost Helios, 9 burned a sickly amber, choked with ionized dust and the distant thunder of orbital bombardment. Sirens screamed through the metal corridors, echoing like dying animals, while soldiers ran past me with weapons raised and fear carved into their faces. I stood alone near the observation window, watching the alien fleet tighten its noose around our failing station. That was when she entered the room, silent, poised, dangerous. She was taller than me, her posture rigid with authority, her skin a deep iridescent blue that shimmered under the emergency lights. Gold markings traced the sharp lines of her face, pulsing faintly with bioluminescence. Her eyes, those eyes, were a pale silver, cold and cutting, like blades forged from moonlight. "Human," she said, her voice clipped and sharp through the translator collar at her throat. "Step away from the window." I didn't move, not because I was brave, because I was tired. "Tired of running," I said quietly. "Tired of pretending this station still matters." Her fingers tightened around the hilt of her sidearm. "You will obey, or you will die." I turned to face her then, meeting her gaze. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Around us, the station trembled as another impact shook the hull. "Do it," I said. "Shoot me." Her jaw tightened. The silver in her eyes flickered. She lowered the weapon. That was the first crack in her armor. Her name was Kael, commander of the Varelian Vanguard, an elite force sent to crush humanity's last resistance in this sector. To her people, humans were reckless, violent, and biologically unstable. To us, the Varelians were conquerors wrapped in the language of order and enlightenment. She told me all of this later, of course. Back then, all I knew was that she hated me. Or, at least she said she did. I was taken prisoner along with a handful of surviving technicians after Helios. 9 finally fell. The rest were either evacuated or vaporized. Kael personally oversaw my transfer to her flagship, the Sovereign Ascendant. She walked beside me through gleaming corridors of alien alloy, her presence like gravity, impossible to ignore. "You are fortunate," she said without looking at me. "My soldiers wanted to execute you." "Lucky me," I muttered. Her eyes snapped to mine. "Do not mistake mercy for weakness, human." I smiled despite myself. Wouldn't dream of it. That earned me a look of pure disdain. And yet, something lingered beneath it. Something unspoken. The days that followed blurred together in sterile interrogation rooms and long hours of isolation. They questioned me about Earth's defenses, about resistance cells, about technologies humanity barely understood itself. I told them what I could. I lied when I had to. Kael was always there. She never raised her voice, never threatened torture. She simply watched me with those sharp silver eyes, as if peeling back layers of my mind one question at a time. "You are inefficient," she said once, pacing slowly around the table. "Your species wastes energy on emotion." "And yours doesn't?" I asked. "You invaded an entire sector because humans wouldn't bow fast enough." Her steps faltered. "That is not emotion," she said coldly. "It is necessity. Whatever helps you sleep." She stopped directly in front of me. For a heartbeat, we were close enough that I could see the subtle glow beneath her skin, the faint tremor in her breathing. "I do not sleep," she said, but her eyes betrayed her. The turning point came during a jump through unstable space. A sabotage attempt, by humans ironically, ripped through the ship's lower decks, disabling gravity stabilizers and sending the Sovereign Ascendant into chaos. Alarms howled. Crew members were thrown against walls. Fires erupted along the corridors. My cell door burst open as emergency protocols kicked in. Kael was there within seconds. Blood, purple, not red, trickling from a cut along her temple. "You," she barked. "Move." She dragged me through collapsing hallways, shielding me from debris with her own body. When we finally reached a secure chamber, she collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. "You could have left me," I said quietly. She laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Do not flatter yourself. I needed your access codes." Liar. Her eyes met mine. The silence between us stretched, thick and electric. "I should have let you die," she said. "But you didn't." Her gaze flickered again. That same hesitation I'd seen back on Helios 9. After that, everything changed. I was no longer confined to my cell. Officially, it was because my technical expertise was required to stabilize damaged systems. Unofficially, it meant I spent long hours working alongside Kael in the ship's command sectors. We argued constantly. She criticized human engineering. I mocked Varelian rigidity. We clashed over strategy, ethics, and the definition of peace. She called me reckless. I called her heartless. "I hate you," she said one night as we stood alone in the observation deck, stars streaking past as the ship accelerated. "Join the club," I replied. "Membership's free." She turned to me, fists clenched. "You undermine my authority. You question my command. You should despise me." "Maybe I do." Her eyes searched my face, as if looking for something she didn't want to find. "You are dangerous," she said softly. "Not because you are human, because you make me doubt." That was the first time she admitted it. The war didn't stop for our personal revelations. Human resistance forces launched a desperate counteroffensive weeks later, ambushing Varelian supply lines and crippling several capital ships. Kael was ordered to lead the suppression. On the eve of battle, I found her alone in the command chamber, staring at a holographic map of human colonies marked for pacification. "You don't have to do this," I said. "Yes, I do. You could delay, miscalculate, give them time." She turned slowly. "You ask me to betray my people. I ask you to choose who you want to be." Her jaw tightened. "You think this is easy for me? I think you care more than you pretend." Silence. Then, barely above a whisper, "I hate you." I stepped closer. "No, you don't." Her breath caught. For a moment, I thought she might strike me. Instead, she pressed her forehead against mine, a Varelian gesture of trust so intimate it stole my breath. "When this ends," she said, voice trembling, "one of us will be destroyed." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe we change everything." The battle was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Space itself seemed to tear as fleets collided, energy weapons painting the void in violent color. The Sovereign Ascendant took heavy damage, its shields failing under relentless assault. In the chaos, Kael made her choice. She altered targeting parameters, diverting fire away from civilian transports. She delayed reinforcements. She created gaps where humans could escape. Her second-in-command noticed. So did High Command. By the time the battle ended, the outcome was clear, a Varelian victory on paper, but a strategic failure in reality. Kael was summoned to answer for it. She didn't resist when they came for her. I did. I stole a shuttle, bypassed security, and broke her out as she was being escorted to judgment. We fled into uncharted space, pursued by ships that had once answered to her command. "You've doomed yourself," she said as I piloted through asteroid fields. "They will never stop hunting us." "Good," I said. I was getting bored. She laughed then, really laughed, and the sound echoed through the small cockpit like a promise. We spent months on the run. hiding among fringe worlds, trading skills for fuel, learning each other's silences. Lyra shed her commander's armor piece by piece, revealing the person beneath, the doubts, the guilt, the hope she'd buried under duty. One night, beneath an artificial sky on a forgotten moon, she finally spoke the truth. "I was taught to hate you," she said, sitting beside me, watching unfamiliar constellations drift overhead. "Your kind represented chaos. But you are different." "I'm exactly what you were warned about," I said. "Stubborn, emotional, impossible." She smiled faintly. "Yes." She took my hand, a bold, defiant act. "I said I hated you," she continued, "because admitting the opposite terrified me." I squeezed her fingers. "Your eyes gave you away." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and in that gaze was everything she'd never said. The end came quietly. A remote system. A chance at amnesty brokered by a coalition tired of endless war. Lyra testified against her own command, exposing atrocities, forcing negotiations that reshaped the balance of power. She was stripped of rank, exiled, free. We settled on a border world where humans and Varelians lived side by side in uneasy peace. She took a new name. I rebuilt ships instead of breaking them. Sometimes people ask how it started. How two enemies crossed a line that should never have existed. I tell them the truth. She said she hated me, I say with a smile. But her eyes told a different story. And they still do. The first time someone tried to kill her on that border world, it happened quietly. No orbital strikes. No declarations of war. Just a single sniper round fired from a rooftop at dusk, the sun bleeding red across the horizon, like an old wound reopening. I saw the glint of metal a split second before it happened. "Kael!" I shouted. I didn't think. I moved. The shot tore through the air where her head had been an instant earlier. We hit the ground together, hard. The breath knocked from my lungs as the round shattered glass behind us. Alarm screamed. People ran. She stared at me, stunned. "You reacted before me," she said, disbelief flickering across her face. "Guess I'm still reckless," I gasped. Her hands were shaking. That night, as emergency lights bathed our small home in harsh white, she finally accepted what we'd both been avoiding. "They will never stop," she said quietly. "To my people, I am a traitor. To yours, I am a reminder of invasion." "So what?" I replied. "We run again?" She shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "We stand." The trial that followed wasn't held in a grand hall or broadcast across the galaxy. It took place in a neutral station at the edge of known space, attended by representatives who were tired of war, tired of lies, tired of burying the dead. Lyra stood alone before them. No armor, no insignia, no title, just her. She spoke for hours. She spoke of Varelian doctrine, how conquest had been dressed up as order, how fear of humanity's unpredictability had been used to justify extermination. She presented data, recordings, battle logs. She named names. When they asked why she betrayed her command, she didn't look at them. She looked at me. "Because I saw myself reflected in an enemy," she said. "And I realized the monster I feared was the one I had become." Silence followed her words. Heavy. Final. The verdict wasn't justice. Not really. Justice would have required too many graves to speak. But it was enough. Sanctions. Withdrawals. Borders redrawn. A ceasefire that, for the first time, actually meant something. When it was over, Lyra was officially erased. Declared dead by the Varelian Empire. She exhaled when she heard it, like She'd been holding her breath her entire life. "I am no one now," she said softly. I took her hand. "You're everything." Years passed. The border world grew. Humans and Varelians didn't become friends overnight, but they learned. Children played together without knowing which species had once tried to wipe out the other. Markets sold hybrid tech. Languages blended. And Kael changed. She laughed more. Actually slept. The sharp edges softened, though the strength never left. At night, she would sometimes trace the scar on my shoulder from that first escape and shake her head. "I was taught that attachment was weakness," she said once. "Yet it is the only thing that ever made me strong." I kissed her forehead. "Told you emotions weren't a waste of energy." She snorted. "You are still inefficient." On the anniversary of Helios 9's fall, we returned to orbit. The station was long gone, reduced to debris and memory, but the stars were the same. Cold. Endless. Watching. She stood beside me at the viewport, hands clasped behind her back. "I hated you," she said suddenly. I smiled. "You've mentioned." She turned, silver eyes reflecting starlight, softer now but no less intense. "I hated you because you survived," she continued. "Because you refused to break. Because you saw me not as a commander, but as a person." She stepped closer. "And because if I had allowed myself to care, everything I believed in would have collapsed." I rested my forehead against hers, just like she'd done years ago on the ship. "So," I whispered, "do you still hate me?" Her eyes burned with something fierce and unyielding and painfully honest. "No," she said. "I never did." Outside, stars drifted on, silent witnesses to a truth that war, empires, and hatred had failed to erase. She had said she hated me, but her eyes had always told the truth.